Okay, we're doing it from another noisy place today. Fucking motorcyclist just turned up right as I started. Still going around and around. Going way too fast for a supermarket car park, which is what this is. Gonna fucking mow someone over. Anyway, let's try and look at my topics. You're rolling, aren't you? Defending objectivism. Selfishness isn't selfish. So I don't really know enough about objectivism, but what I do know about it I like. Objectivism is Ayn Rand's philosophy. I was first introduced to it via Bioshock, the game, in which I believe Andrew Ryan is meant to be the objectivist. And you think he's, because you're guided through the map by Atlas at the start, you think that like Andrew Ryan's the bad guy as you're going through this underwater city, but then you find out later on that he's kind of the good guy and he was trying to free you, sort of thing. He was trying to get you to believe in choice and realise that you're under control and that you're actually a slave unless you break your programming, sort of thing.
A man chooses. A slave obeys. You think you have memories. A farm. A family. Stop, would you kindly? Would you kindly? Powerful phrase.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
A man chooses. A slave obeys.
In a pivotal scene at the end where you end up killing him as the player, and you can't do anything about it because you realise you're like being controlled essentially by another guy. Should I do spoilers? I won't do spoilers. Yeah, so objectivism. So Ayn Rand is a woman. I don't know. I think she lived in the era of World War II, or she might have lived just after then, in the 1950s. She might have been most active. She's an older woman, a very peculiar look, and she is quite a strong woman, and she's strong in mind. She has these beliefs that are very different to the mainstream.
How do you feel about the political trends of the United States?
You are moving toward disaster until and unless all those welfare state conceptions have been reversed and rejected. It is precisely these trends which are bringing the world to disaster, because we are now moving towards complete collectivism or socialism, a system under which everybody is enslaved to everybody. And we are moving that way only because of our altruist morality.
Yes, but you say everybody is enslaved to everybody, yet this came about democratically, Ayn. Do you object to the democratic process?
I object to the idea that people have the right to vote on everything. The traditional American system was a system based on the idea that majority will prevailed only in public or political affairs, and that it was limited by inalienable individual rights. Therefore, I do not believe that a majority can vote a man's life or property or freedom away from him.
And a very cohesive ideology, which I haven't been able to completely unpick, but some of it went off into libertarianism, which is what I am. So you can see some things that she says. You listen to her talk and she's very interesting in any interview or any talk she does. And it's all about, like, is selfishness really selfish? Is generosity even good? And there's another word for generosity which is outlined in Bioshock. I can't quite remember what it is. I'll put it on the screen if I do remember what it is. And so generosity, in terms of Ayn Rand's philosophy or Andrew Ryan's philosophy as well, is bad. And selfishness is not bad, because you're talking about being an individualist. You're talking about self-reliance, self-worth, taking your own choices as an individual rather than having some sort of debt to a charity or a community or to the outside world or to a collective? Like, as a human, do you need to be indebted to other people around you? Or can you just, is it fine to just be that human, like be yourself sort of thing? And yeah, it ties into the whole kind of no masters, no slaves thing of anarchism. And there are a lot of themes running through that I really like. I haven't heard of all of it. Apparently there's an odd position on religion, but that is coming from a religious guy, because Razorfist liked Ayn Rand, so he talked about her a lot, but Razorfist is not an objectivist. You can't find many people online who are objectivists. It's very minority, very niche, extremely niche. It probably shouldn't be, I think. If the world was saner, there'd be a lot more objectivists around than there would be socialists or even conservatives, I think, because it's about self-reliance, basically, from what I can work out. It's mainly about not having to rely on other people to do things and not having to, base your life on other people in order to get by. So listen to Ayn Rand speak if you want to know more about objectivism, and I will do the same, because I'm always interested to try and find out more about objectivism. That fucking motorcyclist is zooming around the car parking again. Could just hit someone. He keeps going high speed. So, to chain on to another few topics. So my vlog notes for this video were a bit of a mess, a hodgepodge. Lots of things in together that probably should be individual subjects. Localism versus globalism / humanism. So humanism versus localism. Yeah, that makes sense. So I always used to be like a humanist after my, I can't say after my atheist days, because I'm still an atheist, but I've always for a long time been a humanist, which is to say that I don't believe in the power of God, God to rule, God to give morals. I believe in humans. That comes from humanity themselves. Humans give themselves their own morals, but it's more individualist than humanist, which is sort of different. Individualism and humanism are different things. Humanism actually ties a bit into collectivism and globalism, because you're saying that you care for every human, or most humans. It's quite religious in a way, despite being an atheist thing. So I chained on to trying to be a humanist because I was an atheist, and secular humanism's kind of teaching you things against religion, but the more you think about it now, like, humanism kind of teaches things for religion in a way, because it's I've talked to a lot of religious people. Like, my ex-girlfriend was type of Christian, let's not go there, and the people I'm talking to now, I've got a friend in Canada who is a Catholic, and they often go with this humanistic philosophy where they'll care for people they haven't met, and they'll say everybody is welcome. Like, any stranger that I may meet, I might trust instantly, which is kind of a leftist thing as well. Like, they take holidays abroad and they want to trust random people from countries they haven't been to and that they haven't met, because minorities and race stuff that they think is kind, and as a result they go on holidays and they get killed quite a lot or they become the victim of crimes very often, like theft, robbery. Now it's distracting because all the cars are doing some wild traffic shit in front of me. Yeah, so I don't think humanism in terms of trusting strangers and trusting people you've never met before or you don't know anything about just because they're a human. I think that's a collectivism, and it's not what I believe. So I believe in individualism, clearly, and I believe in localism. So localism for me is you trust who you know, you trust your family and your friends, and you trust the people who you let into your life, and you center your life about the people you care about, the people you know that you care about, because then you know something about them, which is why you trust them, because you know who they are, and you can drop them if you don't trust them, sort of thing. And then they go into that realm where you don't have to care about them, you just care about, your localism, your friends and your family and the people you know who you choose to care about. So localism, people say that's against charity. Oh my God, you're against charity. You wouldn't give to charity because that's just far off people you haven't met before who have some sort of cause, like they've all got this disease or they're all in this other country. Why won't you give to charity, damn it? And for me, like, giving to charity, you want to give money to people you know or know about. So you know what their situation is, you know that they're suffering, you can verify where your money's headed to, which you can't with charities. Like actual charity organisations, they're basically stealing a lot of money to give to themselves at the end of the day. That money goes to the organisation itself in a lot of cases. There's no way of proving that money that you've given them is going to where they say it's going. So there's a lot of lying going on there. And you can just get rid of all that by giving money to people that you know, because you know what they're about, you know what their situation is, you know they're in pain, you know if you give them money it can help them. So you can make that choice a lot more in an informed way with localism than you can with collectivism and humanism and bullshit like that. Yeah, so that's a basic thing about localism. Another thing about localism is that kind of ties into the ANCAPistan era thing of, defend your home, clearly. It's got your family in it, it's got you in it, it's got your pets in it. But also, you might want to defend your neighbours if you choose to let them into that circle of localism. It's your local... See, this chains onto the word community. I don't like the term community. I always used to like the term community because I'd be like, I'm part of the Unreal mapping community or whatever. I'm part of the filmmaking community. I'm part of the fan of movie community or fan of game community. Now, I used to thought that was kind of fun, I hang out with the people of my interest group, I suppose is what I was trying to get at, but I didn't use those words. I always used the word community, which was a mistake in hindsight. Community, you could say, community sounds like communism, but it's not, because it's got that commune thing at the start of it. So is it communism? No, it's not. But you have that graph where you got the midwit thing where it's like, I believe one thing on the edge, then a curve upward to the middle of the graph, and it's high up, and it's like, I believe the opposite thing. And then later on, over time, graph goes down to the end of the graph where it's like it was at the beginning, and it's like, I believe the same things I did at the beginning. It's kind of like that, the midwit graph meme. So it's kind of like that thing where you believe one thing and then you believe the completely opposite, and then you go back to believing that thing. So community is kind of communistic because it's talking about collectivist groups. There are some ways in which you can use the word community to mean a good thing. You can say the community means that kind of interest group, I guess, of your friends who like this film, but that's always in danger of just immediately becoming collectivism, because then you start identifying with that group rather than as yourself as an individual. You start going, there's a difference between I am a Star Wars fan, as in I like Star Wars, to I am a Star Wars fan. I am part of the group called Star Wars fans, and we all believe this, and we all defend each other, and we act in this collectivistic way. So that's the difference between hey, I'm interested in something, to hey, I'm identifying as part of a group, and I can't extricate myself from the group's beliefs, else I'll anger the group or something. That's the difference between me being an atheist and me joining the movement called Atheism Plus, that is where atheists group up into a movement that all believe a thing. No, I don't need to attach myself to a collectivist group or movement in order to not believe in a deity. That can just come from within myself, that belief. So people group up for dumb reasons, and then that kind of traps them in the group, and they're suddenly a collectivist. They're working too intently for a group of people who actually don't represent them. Like, I'm bi, but I'm not part of the LGBT movement, whatever the fuck that is, because that's a far-left political activist movement, a big collective, and once you think you've joined it and you're posting all your rainbow flags around the place, you can't extricate any individuality for yourself out of that group. You are part of that group, and you want to do what the group says that they're doing and what you should do when you're part of that group. That's not a way to be. That's just removing your own individuality, individualism, should I say. So yeah, that's a little bit of localism. I was trying to say something back there. Oh yeah, localism ties on with the anarchist thing, because when you've got castle doctrine and guns, you might want to defend your home and your property from attack. But if you've got neighbours who you like, they might want to call on you, pay you, or you might have a deal with them, trade goods for services or services for services in such a way that you might go over there and defend their property from attack by burglars or commies or government agents. So that's how localism can tie into anarchism quite a lot. Localism versus globalism is probably quite obvious. You want to maybe, like I say, defend members of your village and your locals who you know, whereas you don't want to go to war for your government to defend your country overseas or whatever. Just go to war because your country is going to war, and your country is your government most of the time. But your national culture comes from you and the history you've lived within the country, so the country can also be a place. So that's a couple of words with lots of meanings to them that you have to extricate as well. A lot of this boils down to, like, any word that you land on, some of them can have multiple meanings, so you have to decide what meaning of a word you're using anytime you try and use that word in like a political argument or debate or discussion. You have to define your terms. That's why a lot of live streams where they have debates start with the two debating oppositional guys defining terms. Like, can we make sure that we're not getting into semantics here by saying that wolf, the word wolf, means to you what it does to me, or maybe at least I understand how you define wolf because it's different from how I define wolf. So now when we say wolf in this conversation, at least we know where each other's coming from, because we both have a different definition of, like, this word which I've just picked at random, wolf. You know, it's probably not going to be wolf. It's probably going to be like progressives or communism or capitalism or something, because the commies think they know what capitalism is, and they don't, and so they have this completely different definition from the capitalists about what capitalism means. Like, they're like, oh my god, capitalism, and then they post a picture of a child slave in a mine, and you're like, oh, this only happens under capitalism. Well, this would never happen if there was no capitalism. I'm like, dude, we don't have capitalism. Why are you posting a picture of a slave in a mine? We've never really had capitalism. That slave under the mine existed under the auspices of government. It has nothing to do with capitalism because there was a government, so there was regulation of the market, so there was no free trade, so there was no capitalism happening. It's like, what are you doing? Like, yeah, you can't. So you have to define terms if you're going to argue with a commie or a socialist or an SJW over things like capitalism. Yeah, that's I mean, that's a dense few topics. So my vlog notes said I was also going to be talking about division versus unity. Fucking seahole. Unity versus division. So I can touch on this topic before we leave. There's so many topics crammed into this video, I swear, dude. Way too many. Need to focus on each one individually, I think, but I said I'd do it. Unity is bad, I think. Unity, the push for unity, is one of the two main contributing reasons for the start of World War One. The Yugoslavs wanted to unify all their nations together, and that's what led to the Black Hand killing Archduke Franz Ferdinand and triggering off, you know, the war between Serbia and Austria, or Austro-Hungary. That was due to unity and also a web of protectorates. I think I've got a World War One video for the 100th anniversary commemorations. So I probably went into it a little bit there. So unity is actually a bad thing, and unity is obviously the root of collectivism. If you want to unify a bunch of people into a group, a nationality, an ideology, just this thing. Let's unify people. Let's put all these people into a gang, a bunch of believers in a subject. No, that's collectivizing, dude. Why are people on about we must be unified? No, we mustn't. We must be individualists. And people on the right push for this shit, and it's insane because they're like, the right is doing what the left does. The right is collectivizing. There has always been a collectivist element to the right, or you want to call them the far right, you can, but you know, it triggers the people on the right if you use the term far right. It's insane because they're the same as the far left in so many ways, that the right-left dichotomy is just like becoming less and less useful over time. You might as well just call them a bunch of authoritarian fucking statists and say both authoritarian wings are the same. Why aren't you bastards in the centre, where you're not hurting anyone with your insane beliefs, or enslaving anyone, or stealing from them? So yeah, unifying is bad. Division, see, we get onto the same topic that the right are going like, why are you being so divisive? Oh my god, this is divisive. These people talking about this are doing divide and conquer tactics. Oh, it's so divisive. You shouldn't divide us. We should be together in this. Like, no, now you're fighting against individualism and you're fighting for collectivism again. Division is good, and this actually chains on to Ayn Rand, because I think she had a nice quote somewhere, which if I can find it, I'll put the quote on the screen. And it kind of relates to how division is good because it breaks down collectives and collectivist groups. And what's the smallest division, or indivisible? The smallest thing you can divide down to is the individual. Like how many, like what, you can't, I mean, I'm not talking about chopping up a human in half so you can divide him that way. You've got to draw the line there. We're talking about if you're grouping humans, like in a sports hall, if you get there's a crowd of people, okay, we'll divide them in half. Okay, there's 2 crowds of people. We'll divide them in half again. There's 4 crowds of people, a lot less in each group. Keep on dividing. What do you end up with? 1 person here, 1 person here. Same amount of people, but they're not together. They're not in these groups where because they're, by virtue of being in those groups, they think they have to act alongside that group and do what it wants and do what it does and do what it thinks and act similarly to those people who are beside them. That's bad. When we're all individuals, it doesn't mean, and people use this bullshit term, atomized individual. Individualism doesn't mean that each person should be on their own, not talking to other people, not doing anything with other people at all. Like, I believe in free trade, I believe in capitalism. Like, these people should be interacting with each other to do transactions and trades. They should be trading goods for services, money for goods, goods for goods, goods for services, services for goods, services for services. That's capitalistic behaviour, and that's individualism, because you're not joining any group or anything. You're saying, I will give you X if you will give me X. Do we agree to this consensually? No, okay, then the transaction won't happen. Or, yes, okay, then I'll paint your fence, services, if you give me 5 apples, goods, and we decide if the value of painting the fence is comparable to 5 apples, or whether you need 10 apples because that's how much you think the value of painting the fence is. And that's individualism. And yeah, you can sort of temporarily group up, shall we say, without identifying with a collectivist group. You can group up in this way as an individualist. You can work together as individualists. Which is to say, an individual, I think, can team up with other individuals as long as they have a common goal, which is achievable in a certain time frame, and you can pull out of that group anytime you want, and there's no penalty or anything for pulling out of that group. So you say you want to build a bridge with 20 other people. That's the goal, right? So you build the bridge is done, your group dismantles. It's over. We've achieved our goal. We've done what we set out to do. There's no need to band together anymore. We have used our people power, and we're not like the collectivist group called the Bridge Builders, who will go on in future to build loads of bridges, and we know all the philosophy about bridge building, and no one can deny our bridge building expertise, and we all have the bridge builder philosophy, and we like championing other bridge builders for social justice and all this bullshit. No, you build the fucking bridge and then you're done, and you've got what you set out to do. And then there's the time frame, like you can temporarily group up. I don't like using the word group because it chains into collectivism, but you can team up with a bunch of people to do something political, like try and get something to happen political wise, and it could be in a time frame, or it could be a certain goal. Let's say the time frame, though, the time frame argument, we're trying to make this political thing happen before next year, before New Year's Day next year. We are going to get 100 people into homes or something, or we're going to use agitprop to attack these feminist strongholds of these things they've assembled. Like, we're gonna make this other political group look ridiculous and non-viable before next New Year's Day. And so that's why we're ganging up in this group of 10 people. And so the 10 people go, all right, that's what it is. That's what the little group is. That's what the team, that's what their goal is. And you reach New Year's Day of next year, and the goal you've set out to do hasn't really happened. At that point, you leave the group. You can just say, either I'll stay in the group because I think we can make a new time frame, but we're starting to get into collectivism here, or we'll just say the group hasn't done what it set out to do, let's disband. And there's no point in us being in this group anymore because we had the time frame for the goal, we didn't complete it, so let's leave. Unless we're gonna get paid to stay in the group, and it becomes like a job, goods for services sort of thing. You can do it that way. So that's quite complicated to explain for me, but hopefully you can get your head around it. That's a way in which individualists can team up for a time frame or a goal, and then naturally, individualists will disband, and they'll probably splinter over time just because their inclinations are away from collectivism and hanging in those sorts of groups and towards individualism. So, the anti-SJWs, they kind of splintered up because a lot of them were individualists back in the day. So it was kind of natural in a way. There was no particular time frame or goal. It's just we prefer doing things on our own and not being in a collectivist group, so naturally it kind of splintered and people went off their own way. Although, those people have changed after the fact, but that's a different conversation. Anyway, thought I was going to go all like V there and go, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. No. I'd like to hear from you on any of these concepts that I'm discussing, so if you do want to leave a comment that's on topic, just saying what you think, or if you have a different view on it, then that would be cool to check out. That is my goal. One of my goals at the end of the day would be to have people talking about things on topic, I guess. But that's not my main goal. My main goal is to express myself and get these thoughts out into the world so that they can live on after I've gone, essentially. Anyway, I'm going to do a little bit of last Christmas shopping, and I'll catch you later, guys. Hopefully this was a slightly more interesting, not necessarily super positive and joyous and upbeat video for Christmas compared to the last one, which was about death. But this isn't as dark as that one. This actually has it does have some positivity behind it. Individualism, localism, dude, these things are all good things. Catch you later, folks.
Nice work. time to end this little masquerade. The name's Frank Fontaine, kid.
Then how do we arrive at action? How should we arrive at action?
By voluntary consent, voluntary cooperation of free men, unforced.
And you believe that there should be no right by the government to tax. You believe that there should be no such thing as welfare legislation, unemployment compensation, regulation during times of stress, certain kinds of rent controls and things like that.
That's right. I'm opposed to all forms of control. I am for an absolute, laissez-faire, free, unregulated economy. If you do not regulate production and trade, you will have peaceful cooperation and harmony and justice among men.